Hi everyone, and welcome to this online seminar on the radicalization of young men and boys on social media. My name is Kaarel Lott. I'm a junior research fellow in digital media studies here at the University of Tartu, and I'm also a PhD student. And the focus of my PhD project is specifically on the manosphere and how these communities on the manosphere and these ideas are becoming increasingly mainstreamed. So yeah, we decided to host this seminar because this topic has gotten even more attention now since Netflix released its hit series Adolescence. And this is a tough topic to handle because it concerns gender norms, and people often have very strong feelings and views about gender. So I hope that with today's seminar, I can give you some support in tackling this tough topic. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what's coming up today. So first of all, we're going to establish the sort of wider social context of why we're even talking about this topic. Then I'm going to introduce you to some basic terms that you should understand when talking about this topic. And then we're going to do a deeper dive into these specific communities that are mainly responsible for radicalizing young men. Therefore, we're going to be talking about the manosphere and Manfluencers as well. Then we're going to take a more specific look into why these ideas are having the success that they are in recent years. Why do these ideas speak to young men? And finally, I want to give you some tips on what to do, how to tackle this topic, and what not to do, the do's and don'ts. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's been a lot of attention on this topic since Netflix released its show Adolescence. And for those of you who haven't seen this show, Adolescence follows a 13-year-old boy named Jamie and how he murdered his classmate Katie. So the show shows us how Jamie is arrested, how the investigation is going, what exactly happened, what's happening in Jamie's school, what's happening in his family. Specifically, it focuses quite a lot on his father. I would say that social media is not necessarily a very strong focus on the show. They don't like explicitly show the influences of social media that much in the show, but it's always there, like in the background more. And you know it's always there. And we do see the consequences of the ideas spreading around in these online communities. So in general, I would say that some of the most important themes that the show touches upon are problematic trends on social media, larger social issues with masculinity, and lastly, the more general way of how people engage with the youth, for example, with parenthood or the education system. So the debates that this show has sparked have been especially intense in the UK. I put a screenshot on the slide as well that now they want to show this TV series in all schools as well. But Adolescence has sparked these debates in many other countries as well, especially like in Estonia as well, for example. So I've been relatively busy the last few weeks. I think in general, it's important to talk about this topic because we are seeing this increasing gap in the ideologies of young men and women, girls and boys. And I think for a long time, people, including myself, we used to think that with the younger generations, their views are going to be more progressive with each generation. But recent data shows that this isn't necessarily the case. So yeah, the chart here shows as well that this is an issue in many, many countries, that girls are becoming more progressive and boys more conservative. And there are a lot of potential reasons behind this. And with boys, it is often associated with social media environments. And yeah, some of you might be asking, why aren't we talking about girls the same way we do about boys with this topic? But the fact is that girls are not being fed this constant targeted stream of very violent and problematic content like boys are. And yeah, already before the Adolescence show as well, the Manosphere was getting quite a lot of attention in both journalism and scientific networks as well. So I put some screenshots of studies here for you to look at. So especially the UK and Australia have been grappling with the issue of radicalization among boys, and luckily they are putting money towards the problem as well, which is a good thing. And yeah, academia has also recognized this issue, and there have been quite a lot of studies done on this topic. But the thing is that the previous studies, they have focused on the more fringe communities of the manosphere, like incels, who we're gonna talk about today. And there has been less focus on the recent shifts in the manosphere. So Manfluencers and people like Tate and so on. So science just hasn't had the opportunity to properly catch up with these developments yet. And yeah, just to stress the importance of this topic, there have been numerous crimes committed by people who have been radicalized by the manosphere. As you can see from the news pieces here, people have been murdered by these young men. These cases are all from the UK, Australia, and Canada as well. But I think this also goes to show to some of you who might be wondering if in the Adolescence TV show, if that was like a realistic portrayal of the actual consequences of these manosphere's ideas, or maybe it was like unjust or unrealistic to show that this could actually lead to committing murder. I think these cases illustrate really well that this narrative that the show had is not very far-fetched, and we have actually seen these cases, and there have been many instances of mass murder as well. Okay, so next up, let's define some basic terms that you need to understand before we take a deeper dive into this topic. And these are the terms of sexism and misogyny. And to put it quite broadly or simply, I would say that sexism and misogyny are both tools to control how women can exist in society. So that means what sort of jobs they might be able to have, how much they get paid for it, how they should behave, and yeah, all these sorts of expectations and rules. And sexism and misogyny are both tools to control these things. So sexism, by definition, is if you have a negative stance towards someone, or you behave negatively towards a person just because of their gender, or you make gender relevant in a context where it's actually not relevant at all. So for example, with female politicians, people often criticize their appearance or their choices in clothing, although that has actually nothing to do with how they are doing their jobs as politicians. Yeah, and by definition, sexism, like people of any gender can be a target of sexism, but sexism disproportionately affects women the most. They are the most common targets of sexism. On the other hand, misogyny is a more violent version. So misogyny aims to punish and discipline women in order to keep them at a social position of disadvantage. And misogyny is explicitly targeted against women. And yeah, often misogyny takes the form of threats of violence. Very often it's threats of sexual violence. And third, we have the term of radicalization. So what does it actually mean? And radicalization is tied to extremist belief systems. It can be encouraging the use of violence or using violence yourself. And radicalization is tied to an ideology. So how a group might see society, which sort of injustices they might perceive, and who they see is at fault for these injustices, and the steps they think are suitable to take to repair these injustices. So often when we think about radicalization, we tend to think of terrorist groups, but this isn't always the case. There are many steps before terrorism, which are also very problematic and worthy of our attention. Okay, so now let's get into the actual topic that we're supposed to talk about today. And we're going to talk about the manosphere. So when you think back on the Adolescence TV show, again, I wouldn't say that the manosphere was very directly represented in the show, actually, but it was a steady undercurrent, definitely. And I think we saw the manosphere most directly in episodes 2 and 3. So in episode 2, it was D.I. Bascom's son. So D.I. Bascom was the man who was doing the lead investigation with the case. And his son had a serious talk with him about how the investigative team is missing the entire context of why Jamie became so radical in the first place. So the coded speech that they used, the words, the emojis, all of that, that was a very direct representation of the manosphere. And the second place where we saw the manosphere quite well, I think, was the third episode, where we could really get an in-depth look into the mind of someone who has been radicalized by the manosphere. So you could really see the way that Jamie interacted with the psychologist who was doing the evaluation on him for the investigation, and see how Jamie confessed to some ideas. It really shows the way that someone who has been radicalized by the manosphere, how they might think. So, the manosphere, what is it exactly? The manosphere is a group of online communities that focus on men's perspectives, problems, and grievances. And I think from this part of the definition, a lot of people might think that, what's wrong with that? Like, they're dealing with men's issues. But this is not true, because often groups in the manosphere, their content is very, very extreme. They aim to punish women because they perceive women to be at fault for all of the injustices that they claim to be experiencing. And yeah, there are way better ways to deal with men's issues than joining the manosphere. So yeah, women are frequent targets of hatred in these communities. Yeah, as I mentioned, there are lots of these communities, and while there is some like overlap in their ideology, so some general things will remain the same, the things that they focus on tend to differ. So whether they focus on romantic relationships or advocacy or other things, we're gonna get to that in a second. And yeah, there are also different subcultures of men there. So for example, jocks or athletic men, geeks, gamers, Christians, and queer men as well, who occasionally unite in their fight against feminism. Yeah, in terms of where we could find these communities, most often they are associated with Reddit and 4chan, because these platforms have very, very minimal moderation, even less than the other mainstream ones. And they are community or sort of forum-based. And often the users are anonymous. So these are the platforms that are most often associated with the manosphere. But as I mentioned in the beginning as well, there have been recent shifts towards more mainstream platforms. on social media. So for example, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram as well. But a bit more about the sort of overlapping general ideology that groups in the manosphere tend to have. So it is united by a metaphor that they borrowed from the film The Matrix. Many of you have probably seen it as well. But anyway, they have a choice between a red pill and a blue pill. So taking the blue pill represents living a life of obliviousness while society is actually exploiting you. Whereas taking the red pill symbolizes learning the ugly, shocking truth about society. You become aware of the injustices and the exploitation that is happening with you. And yeah, in terms of how this might be represented in online communication, with the red pill, often they use the emoji of a tablet, as I put on the screen as well. But anyway, what this ugly, shocking truth is in these communities when you take the red pill is that society is geared against men and women are at fault, and more specifically, feminism is at fault because they see feminism as a hatred of men. And they, like all of these groups, tend to take a very strong position of victims in today's society. So these are mostly white, heterosexual, cisgendered men who take this victimized position. But as I did notice, there are some like different subcultures. For example, queer men are occasionally parts of these groups as well. Yeah, and they often use genetic determinism to explain women's sexual behavior. So they claim how women and men are programmed to behave in certain ways, that men are more dominant and aggressive by nature, and that women are often programmed to pick their partners based on certain traits. So this this means that women prefer more alpha or dominant men in their view. And yeah, they also see women as irrational and hypergamous, which means that women are using men or strategically picking men to form romantic relationships with so that they could climb the social ladder. For example, find a rich husband or find a husband with a strong reputation. So one of the most infamous communities in the manosphere are incels, and incels were represented in the show as well, because Jamie was accused of being an incel, if you remember. And incels are one of the most violent communities in the manosphere, because if you recall from the slides in the beginning, the crimes that I showed you, all of those were committed by incels. So who are incels? Incels are, well, the term comes from two words: involuntary celibates. So these are people who want to form sexual and romantic relationships, but are unable to do so, unfortunately. And in online communication, how you might recognize or come across this incel term in a coded way are with emojis. So the two emojis of an explosion and a pill symbolize an incel, but also the emoji of kidney beans symbolizes incels. Incels also have another pill in addition to the blue pill and the red pill, and this is the black pill. The black pill is a more fatalist version of the red pill, because while the red pill claims to awaken men towards their exploitation and the injustices that they're experiencing, it still gives them some hope that in these groups they can sort of come up with solutions, or at least vent about this. So it doesn't take away all hope. But the black pill is more nihilist and hopeless, because, well, it's specifically focused on forming romantic relationships, and it claims that women are only attracted to appearances and not personalities. So, for example, if you are an unattractive person who has the personality or vibe, let's say, of a bad boy, then you have no hope because women only care about appearances. So if you're not attractive, you have no hope of forming romantic relationships. This is why this takes away all hope from these people. But incels also see sex with women as their right, that they are owed sex. It is a fundamental part of the male experience, which is also very heteronormative. And they have several ideas on policy making as well to better ensure that men are ensured sex. For example, some of them advocate for forced monogamy to ensure that all men are guaranteed a romantic and sexual relationship, because they perceive women being promiscuous as a waste oftentimes. So nihilism and very abusive responses are very common among incels. They have a lot of fantasies of sexual violence in order to punish women for sleeping with multiple men. And as we also talked about in the slides in the beginning, there have also been instances of mass violence as well. Okay, but let's talk about other communities in the manosphere as well, because, okay, incels are probably the most infamous and were represented in the show. There are still a lot of other communities in the manosphere. So first up are pickup artists, who are also focused on forming romantic relationships, but I guess they are more successful in forming these relationships. They are focused on giving tips on how to seduce women. So they see a very transactional nature to relationships. Often this sort of seduction and giving tips is done through misogyny and sexism. So they see that a man's value in the sexual marketplace, so to say, is determined by how well he performs masculinity, or traits and behaviors that are traditionally associated with masculinity. So, for example, how good looking he is, how athletic he is, how charismatic he is. This determines his value in the sexual marketplace. And that in turn determines how well he's going to be able to seduce women. They often manipulate women quite a lot. For example, there's this term called negging, which means that the man is giving backhanded compliments to women in order to lower her self-esteem. So she would look for validation and, I guess, become desperate enough to want to sleep with a pickup artist. And I think these pickup artist type of men are quite well represented in popular culture as well. For example, the first thing that came to my mind was Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother TV show. He is quite similar to a pickup artist. Then we have men's rights activists. They have a more socio-political focus. They are very focused on the fight against feminism. They focus a lot on mobilizing, on recruiting, on activism and policy changes to support men's rights. And yeah, this might sound unproblematic again, but often they do it by focusing on the fight against feminism, claiming that men hold no power anymore in society and blame women for their issues. And finally, we have men going their own way, who see women as dangerous to men's autonomy, especially when relating to finances. They see society as very gynocentric and very focused on women, and they advocate for self-reliance that that men should limit their relations with women, especially legally binding ones, such as marriage. And yeah, often they also focus on praising great men from history who have been creators of civilizations and who have led lives more separately from women. So these are the main communities on the manosphere. But it is very important, if you want to detect if someone has been influenced by ideas from the manosphere, if they are following communities in the manosphere, there's a lot of specific language used that people who are not familiar with will not recognize. So I found some more interesting examples for you here, but I also put a link, and that's going to be in the bio of the video as well, that you can check out regarding the other terms that are common in the manosphere. So first up, this is very common among incels, Chads and Stacys. These are, well, names who they put for the archetypes of men and women who represent the romantically successful, the desirable men and women who incels aspire to be, but unfortunately fail to do so. So yeah, Chads are the alpha males usually, and Stacys are the promiscuous women who are deliberately withholding sex from incels. Then incels also use the term foid or femoid, which comes from the words female humanoid, which they just use to refer to women in a really dehumanizing way. And tied to this dehumanization of women are the many rape fantasies and the general focus on rape in these manosphere communities. For example, a lot of them are focused on false rape accusations. They are very, very worried about how women might be lying about their experiences with sexual violence in order to ruin men's reputation. So they're quite fixated on this. And there's a subgenre of incels called rapecels, who promote specifically sexual violence to punish women for, well, men's inferior position in contemporary society, which they perceive themselves to have. Okay, there's also a lot of focus on masculinity in the manosphere. For example, there's this term called soy boy that they use to refer to men who are perceived as unmasculine. And this comes from this theory that consuming too many soy products actually lowers your testosterone. So if you have lower testosterone, then you are less of a man. Then we have the 80-20 rule, which was also represented in the Adolescence TV show, you might recall. This theory that they have claims that 80% of women are interested in only 20% of men, which really, again, symbolizes their feelings of injustice and hopefulness. And in online communication, the 80-20 rule is referred to with the 100 emoji. So while the other emojis that I showed you, I think they are quite directly tied to the manosphere, then this 100 emoji, this can occur in very different contexts. The context really matters. So you can't say that someone has been influenced by the manosphere just because they're using the 100 emoji. This emoji also means that you just agree with someone 100%. And finally, there's this theory of Lookism that they have, which is very similar to the black pill, which claims that personality doesn't matter, that only looks determine romantic success. Okay, so as I mentioned, in addition to blaming women and feminism, manosphere communities are very obsessed with masculinity and how masculinity should be performed. And based on that performance, are you a proper man, or where do you fall in this hierarchy of masculinities? And yeah, so for example, they have the alpha males. The alpha males are the most dominant pack leaders. They're athletic men in good shape, confident, charismatic, outgoing, and these are the men who women desire. Then there are the sigmas, the sigma masculinity type. Sigmas are very similar to alphas, but in contrast, they like to stick to themselves. They are the lone wolf types. And I think also sigma masculinity has been portrayed in popular culture quite a lot. Then there are the beta males, who are the inferior type of men who are unable to dominate women and other men, and who are often unsuccessful in forming sexual relationships, who are undesirable. But yeah, like some communities, with some communities, this hierarchy is much bigger. This is just a short glimpse, so they go down to delta masculinities and yeah, whatnot. There's also this theory of alpha fucks, beta bucks, which means that women are seeking alpha males for sex while financially exploiting beta men. And I would like to stress with this typology of masculinities that this has become quite viral on social media lately. And a lot of people who might be using the term of alpha males or sigma became really widely used recently. These people might not be aware at all of the connection that this sort of typology has to the manosphere. But still, even despite that, you can see how this sort of typology is still quite harmful, because it makes people very anxious on the way they are supposed to perform their gender, how they're supposed to be masculine, because they get categorized into some group of or some type of masculinity, and that type of masculinity holds a lot of social value. It determines if you're romantically successful, if other people respect you or not. Okay, then we have the more mainstream version of the manosphere. And yeah, these are Manfluencers. Manfluencers weren't very directly represented in the show either. I think it was only in the last episode where the dad was freaking out and speaking to his wife about how he was looking for gym inspiration to get back in shape on social media, and immediately he started to get these videos from weird guys having horrible views on women. And I think this is actually a very telling example because it shows very much how algorithms determine what we see on social media, even if we're actually not interested in this type of content. And this is especially true for TikTok. You don't need to seek out this type of content. It just comes to you very fast. I also had this experience last spring when I was conducting research on Manfluencers. I took a completely new empty phone, created a new TikTok account to see how fast I would start getting these videos from Manfluencers, and it took only 3 or 4 minutes before I got the first video. Okay, so who exactly are Manfluencers? Manfluencers are internet personalities who weaponize highly performative and extremist notions of masculinity. So yeah, they are very focused on coaching other men on how to be men, how to be masculine. And yeah, while doing that, they often promote regressive, sexist ideas about women. And yeah, while these more fringe manosphere communities were more active on 4chan and Reddit, Manfluencers are more active on platforms where they can build a brand, because these are usually not community-based content creators. They aim to create a brand to make money off of as well. And yeah, therefore they are very active on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And yeah, I guess also that can be considered a red flag if, I don't know, your kid or a student is following content on Rumble, because Rumble is really known to be home to content creators who have been deplatformed from other mainstream platforms. But this is also true for Twitter now. And yeah, I guess the most infamous Manfluencer is Andrew Tate, who in online discourse is nicknamed Top G. So when you see this term Top G, you know that this is specifically about Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is an ex-boxer, and yeah, he's from the UK, but he lived in Romania for many years now, and he is still facing accusations of sexual misconduct, human trafficking, and money laundering, all very serious accusations. He became really, really popular on social media a few years back, but then he was deplatformed from the mainstream platforms, except for Twitter, which has, well, yeah, reduced its moderation efforts even more. But even despite him being platformed, his content still remains on TikTok, for example, and Instagram as well, because a lot of people are posting his videos as fans or are just using his audio backgrounds for their own videos. So it's near impossible to actually get rid of Andrew Tate's content. So specifically, his ideologies are as follows. So first, he sees men as the naturally dominant gender, and he thinks that men should take the financial control in a relationship, and he uses the trope of men as natural warriors. So men need to be ready for combat with other men. He also believes women to be that women should be obedient to their male counterparts, and he really glorifies the very traditional relationship dynamics of Muslim countries. Third, he really weaponizes gender stereotypes in order to punish women who challenge men's authority. And finally, as is really common in the manosphere, he also really emphasizes this notion of men as victims in today's society. But I think that we should not focus on Andrew Tate too much, because he is by no means extraordinary. By now, this type of content has developed into a whole genre, I would say. There are so many accounts spreading around very similar narratives about masculinity and women as well, of course. Yeah, Tate is, we shouldn't focus on him too much, because this is a way bigger problem than him. But in general, the main themes that Manfluencers are focusing on are general life advice, where they talk about general mindset. What should your mindset be if you want to achieve certain things, if you want to get your life together? They give relationship advice, so how should you treat women? And yeah, they're also very focused on fitness, how to get in shape, and finance as well. So because in their view, a man only has value if he's financially successful. And I've also put some main ideas up on the slides as well from some research that I did on Estonian Manfluencers. But since the narratives that they are using are so global, I think that these narratives can be extended to the context of many other countries as well. So yeah, we have 3 social levels here: the macro, meso, and micro level. The macro level is, in general, how they perceive society. Then we have the meso level, which is about how men should act with other social groups, for example, with women or other men. And finally, we have the micro level, so what should the mindset of a man be, how they should see themselves. Okay, so starting off from the social macro level, that's they have this idea of doom and gloom society. So they see society as in a state of social chaos and moral decline. They see that the true man has become endangered, and this is where they, as Manfluencers, step in to get men back on track, to reclaim their sort of lost position of power in society. They also have quite a lot of narratives about how they long for the past, and which makes sense because if they claim contemporary society to be so unjust towards men, in the past men faced little to no opposition. So yeah, it makes sense that they are also very much opposing progressive contemporary topics. And then secondly, they, as is really common in the manosphere, right, focus a lot on victimhood as well. So they create this distinction between the brainwashed, woke masses who are out to get good, and masculine men who are for some reason persecuted in today's society. And they also use a lot of slang and profanities in their videos to emphasize this sort of victimized status, as I put on the slide here as well. Then we have the suffering and discipline idea that they have. This is the social micro level. So how should a man behave if they want to take control of their life? So they give tips on how to live a better life than the average person. So they emphasize the need for self-discipline, restraint, and endurance, and they list various condemned activities. So, for example, masturbating, especially to pornography, using nicotine, going out to parties, gaming, and also having mental health problems. And yeah, as you can see from the quote here as well, oftentimes in their videos they use very short, assertive sentences which resemble, I don't know, military speak or this really strict coach talking to you. While you might think that this sort of victimized position that men claim in society might unify them somehow in this struggle, Manfluencers simultaneously create this environment of judgment and competition between men in order to subordinate certain types of men, so the beta males, for example. And they have various metrics for judging if a guy is masculine enough or is performing masculinity well enough. These metrics are, for example, financial success, how rich he is, his family status, is he in a relationship or not, does he have kids, physical shape, is he athletic, and yeah, finally, again, mental health, is he mentally strong? And these are used to determine a man's worth. So finally, there's the social meso level, and this is, here they talk about dominance and violence against other social groups. They really, emphasize that men need to be violent and dangerous, and that men need to dominate women. They use this idea of combat, that men need to be constantly ready to fight other men, that men are very primal and territorial, and they see women as part of their territory. And this sort of protection is compulsory for women if they are in a romantic relationship, because men are constantly ready to fight. And connected to this, they also use quite a lot of victim blaming. So, for example, if a woman who's in a relationship would choose to go out without her boyfriend or husband or whoever, then she is essentially rejecting this compulsory protection and would be at fault if someone should take advantage of her sexually, for example, or use sexual violence. Yeah, you can see this from the quote as well. They also objectify and dehumanize and use condescending language towards women as well. And as you can see from this quote here, for example, this one content creator compares women to dogs. Yeah, an important thing to keep in mind is that these manfluencers are making, the more successful ones are making considerable amounts of money off of this content as well. So they offer various services to their followers, for example, personal consultations related to finance, fitness, and mindset coaching. They engage in community building as well. They usually might post their content on TikTok or YouTube or wherever. Then they create these group chats on other platforms so their followers could actually feel some sort of sense of community and talk to each other. Some of them also have their own products, for example, ebooks or clothes, so merch. And masculinity camps are becoming more and more popular as well, where they get a bunch of men together and train in that process on how to be a proper man. And I've included some screenshots from Andrew Tate's website as well. He has his own Hustlers University, which offers a lot of services to these young men, which are all, most of them are focused on either personal training. So you can see fitness is there, but a lot of it is also focused on facilitating this manfluencer genre. So there's a lot of coaching on copywriting or social media, how to produce content. So this really ensures that this genre is going to grow and grow. But and also financial consultations and so on. But it's also important to consider, why are these ideas so successful, both in the manosphere and in the form of manfluencers as well. So the first aspect has quite a lot to do with architecture of social media. So the manfluencers are often engaging in rage baiting. So that means that they understand that what they say is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but they know that this is only good for them in terms of engagement, because the recommendation algorithms that are driving a lot of social media platforms, they don't care if your engagement is positive or negative. They just care that you engage. We can engage through hate as well. Therefore, it's quite sad and problematic as well that the people who go through the trouble of actually commenting under Manfluencer's videos that, hey, this is really problematic what you're saying, they are actually still further amplifying the content because the platform just sees even the criticizing comments as engagement. So the second aspect is more psychological and personal for young men. So what the manosphere and manfluencers are essentially engaging in is amplifying their anxieties. And we know that being a teenager is hard enough as it is without anyone telling you what a proper man should be like, or how you're never gonna find true love or have sex or whatever. Being a teenager is hard enough. And in contemporary society, we need to consider the current social issues that we're having. So in society, so we have a lot of inflation, wage cuts, stagnation. People have trouble finding a job. There's a housing crisis in many countries. Education costs a lot of money in many countries. And political instability as well is an important factor. All of this really adds to the already existing anxieties that young people might be having. And manfluencers are only amplifying these, right? And we should also consider the sort of more general context of social media as well, that goes outside the manosphere and outside of manfluencers. So there are some concerning trends that just facilitate these feelings of insecurity among young people. And which still focus on gender standards. For example, recently there have been the trends of looks maxing and mewing. So if someone does this position to you, it just means that, hey, I can't talk right now because I'm mewing, which means that they have their tongue at the ceiling of their throat, so they can't talk at the moment. And this is done because, allegedly, it helps to create a better jawline. And there's also the aspect of extreme gym culture on social media. And of course, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with working out or going to the gym. I like it too. But often this is not always the case, but often this type of content is very tied to masculinity, about how to be a proper man, and or if that you should work out so you would be able to dominate other people, to be violent. And this is problematic. So yeah, there is the more general context outside of the manosphere as well that is, I think, quite concerned with how masculinity should be performed. And this still adds to this feeling of anxiety that young people might be experiencing. So it makes sense that young people are looking for answers and some sort of sense of control over their destiny if they're going to find a partner or a job or whatever. And the Manfluencers and the manosphere both at least claim to give these answers and solutions to these problems. They give some sort of sense of control, even though these answers don't work, right? And they're really, really problematic. And yeah, a lot of it is also about community and yeah, I guess support as well, that people who are following this type of content might get. I guess this isn't so true for Manfluencers, because often they don't have these forum type of communities, so you can't actually form like a community or feel a sense of belonging in some of the Manfluencers. But this is definitely true for the manosphere, where they have forums and where you can talk to other people and voice your concerns. And even if this doesn't, like feeling a sense of community or bonding doesn't necessarily happen on social media, this can also happen offline. For example, in schools, it's been shown in research that this sort of sexist and misogynist content, for example, Andrew Tate specifically, young people, young men might be using this sort of content to create bonds with each other, to laugh over it or whatever. So there's a strong offline community building aspect to this as well. So finally, I think it's very important to understand with the Adolescence TV show, although I can't be sure if this is actually their message, but I think this is a very important thing to keep in mind with this TV show, that the problem isn't only social media. There are much larger issues here at play that contribute to this rising polarization and radicalization. And yeah, these underlying issues actually enable this problem to unfold on social media. So we should also really carefully consider how we even approach gender, what sort of expectations we might have for masculinity, what fatherhood should look like, because in the Adolescence show as well, think back on the relationships that D.I. Bascom and Jamie's dad had with their sons. Both were quite absent, actually. One of them had anger issues as well. And all of that, of course, affects how that child is going to perceive masculinity, what sort of standards they create, and what sort of norms these set for romantic relationships as well, right? And yeah, also we should consider the education system. So if you remember in the show, almost all of the classrooms, these kids were being just shown videos and movies, and the teachers weren't actually engaging with these children and forming relationships. So yeah, this is really important to keep in mind, I think. So to sum up, how to detect these ideologies from the manosphere among youth. So the first step, I hope that we took a step in the direction of helping with this, is to be familiar with the general ideologies of the manosphere. So you can actually recognize them when someone starts saying these things. Then you should observe your kids or your students' behavior towards other people, towards girls, other boys, LGBTQ people, and people from different ethnicities, because that can also be a very good indication of if a person has been influenced by the manosphere. Then, of course, there are the code words that we took a look at today. So the top cheese, the chats, the Stacys, the voids, and the use of some emojis. But do keep in mind that with emojis, often that is very context dependent, if it actually refers to the manosphere or it's just a person using this emoji with a different intention. But I do understand that these ideologies can be hard to detect sometimes, especially if they're becoming more and more diffused and ingrained within online culture. So it's also important to consider how to approach someone who has been influenced by the manosphere or Manfluencers. And I hope that these tips will help you, whether you're a teacher or a parent or an uncle or an aunt or whoever. So first of all, I would recommend to not attack the ideologies of the manosphere directly or blame this young man or boy. It's the thing is, especially with Manfluencers, they have this persona of mavericks, of being anti-establishment. So if you attack their ideas, you might further cement their persona as these mavericks, and yeah, that young person will just close off if you start attacking these ideas. So it's better to build a bond and actually assess what's happening. I've seen quite a lot of discourse around banning the use of social media as well. That is probably quite a bad idea, because first of all, social media isn't only a bad thing. There are quite a lot of good things on social media as well. There's a lot of humor and online culture. It's an important way to connect with friends. And it's also important to consider that young people are the natives on social media, not us adults. So they will always find ways around these bans. So yeah, also it's important to keep an open position in general, so that if like a classmate of a person or whoever sees or hears something disturbing, they feel they can actually come and talk to you. Then it's also important to facilitate the safe space for discussion. So if you intentionally are going to tackle this topic, you should be prepared for various quite emotional reactions. And it's good to set rules and boundaries for that type of discussion. So discuss beforehand what sort of stances or behaviors cross the line and do not fall under the category of okay things to discuss, right? And what will happen if someone doesn't follow this rule? This rule should be quite easy to follow, and it shouldn't escalate the situation further either. And it's also important to normalize encountering various ideas in general, and to critically engage with them and interrogate them to really understand why some ideas are problematic, to actually get to the core of those ideas, right? It's also important to reflect on your own knowledge beforehand, before starting these discussions. So where are the limits of your competence? It's better to recognize these gaps and try to fill them, or just admit that you have these, than it is to spread misinformation, which might actually radicalize these young people even further. And yeah, I guess tied to this, a lot of you might be wondering if it would be a good idea to watch the Adolescence TV show with your kids or in your class. And I would say that this is only a good idea if you are actually prepared for the discussions that this TV show is going to create. You shouldn't do this unprepared. You should be up to date with this topic. Already watching the seminar, I hope, helps. But yeah, you should be prepared for these topics because it's going to create uncomfortable and complicated questions. It's also important to recognize that the attention that the manosphere and Manfluencers are getting, they oftentimes stem from very valid problems that young people are struggling with. So try to understand these underlying issues and offer some support in dealing with these things. And if you're sure that a young person is being radicalized by this type of online content, it's important to monitor the situation, and if necessary, then notify that person's parents as well. And I think there are some things we should consider more generally as well. So it's important to give young people and kids good media literacy and critical thinking skills in schools. This is important so they can know how this type of content works. And this isn't only about the manosphere. This sort of critical thinking skills and media literacy also enables them to recognize other types of manipulation and propaganda. So it's really important to deal with these issues, right? And also, this is, while it's really important to prevent the worst outcome, which, like in the case of Adolescence, was murder, we are also trying to deal with breaking these harmful gender norms that have been in place for decades and decades. So this is to ensure that masculinity isn't this very strict type of box where young men need to fit into in order to feel, I don't know, valid as men or whatever. So it's really important to reflect on your own expectations regarding masculinity, regarding gender in general, and how this might restrict someone's behavior and self-expression. Okay, in terms of actual content of the manosphere, we are done for this seminar. I've also included some useful resources, I hope, for all you listening, which you can find under the event, and we're gonna add the links to the bio of the video as well. Okay, so thank you all for listening. I hope that you got some useful ideas from this seminar. And yeah, have a lovely rest of the day, and good luck if you are going to tackle this topic by yourself as well. Bye.